Craig Shimahara has loved film ever since he walked out of a Star Wars matinee at 7 years old. His latest project, Masterless, we just saw the trailer there, has received high praise at independent film festivals, including being named the best overall feature at the 2015 Fort Worth Indie Film Showcase. Good to have you with us today, Craig.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate
it.
And
let's get a little bit of your story, because as a young, aspiring film producer and maker and falling in love with the industry of film, you went to UCLA.
That's right.
To study architecture.
Right.
And your pathway of life kind of went, not necessarily, went in a great direction with architecture, but what was it that kind of brought you back to, I would say, quote, the first love of wanting to communicate artistically through the medium of film?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, Stephen and Valerie, I just want to thank you for the chance to be on the show. It's a real privilege.
You're welcome.
But no, I've always loved film, as you mentioned, 7 years old, watching Star Wars. But and being in Los Angeles, the industry is pervasive. Filmmakers are everywhere. On my block where I live in Santa Monica, there's just all kinds of producers and boom artists and things like that. But I've always known the power of film and how influential it can be, and I wanted to use it as a way to communicate who I am as an artist, and that would mean making sure that my faith was expressed in film. Architecture, I love architecture. My business is in architecture, but the narrative, the way to express a story it's a little more esoteric, a little harder to read. And I've loved film, and it just seemed like a natural progression.
Yeah. So what was it like then when you kind of not had to, but decided to make that kind of step of faith to, go outside of your business and kind of start this project? Because it's been a number of years in the making. It's not an easy thing to do.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a distinct decision. It didn't feel that way anyway. It was, like I said, it was kind of a natural thing. It was just something I've always loved, and I was talking to my wife, Lorraine, who's here, and she said she was surprised, but she said, "Craig, if this is something that God has put on your heart, I think one of the ways you're going to have to do this is carve out some extra time for yourself." And that's when I started the business that I own and operate now, and I've structured it in a way that I can try to give myself some latitude to pursue these things. So about 17 years ago, started doing some short films on the side, and finally did a feature. Only took 17 years.
Well, Craig, I hear today is your birthday, so happy birthday to
happy
you.
Birthday.
Okay, so you're an architect, and you managed to use your skills as an architect to create this film. Kind of give us the backstory, because I noticed there, it seems like the story takes place at a firm, an architectural firm.
Right.
So, I mean, that's creative, that you could use your actual real-life skills to make a film. How do you do that, though?
Well, you write what you know. I'm sure you've heard that. And
Right.
I was just lazy. I didn't want to do any research on the protagonist's profession. It was easy to write about the nuances of the profession, having been in it. But my company, we actually don't practice architecture in the pure sense. We actually do digital graphics. So for the easiest way to explain it is that if there's like an empty plot of land for a building that will eventually be built, my company, we do the kind of the pre-visualization of that building for marketing and to basically sell the idea of the building.
Correct.
So I was able to use those skills to do the visual effects for this film. Half of the film is done in the spirit world, if you will, and we shot all of those scenes on green screen.
Wow.
And so then my company then filled in all of the kind of digital background.
Tell us about the story itself of Masterless. Just looking at the trailer and reading up a little bit about it, it's quite imaginative. Having this cross-world, cross-cultural, cross-time kind of feel to it. What is kind of the essence of the film?
Well, it's about an architect who goes through kind of the normal ups and downs of life. He's not a believer, his wife is, but when his wife falls ill and he's laid off of work, he goes on this journey of faith. But what's unique about this film is that there's this kind of duality to it. There's the spiritual side of him that's represented by this Ronin character, or Master the Samurai. And the main character, whose name is Cain, is an atheist, and so his spirit, the Ronin, is kind of wandering. And once these kind of tragedies happen in his life, he goes on this journey of faith, exploring faith, and likewise the Ronin goes out and searches for the great tree. So there's some parallels there, and ultimately they fight their demons, and there's a climactic battle at the end.
I'm not going to ask you to do a spoiler alert and tell us who wins, but I mean, I'd imagine you talk about this character Cain being an atheist. Those are real life themes that a lot of people struggle with, you know, believing, and is there a God, is there not a God?
Right.
So what's the takeaway in your mind for people who see this film? What do you want them to walk away with?
Valerie, I'm so glad you asked that, because that's the intent of the film. It was always meant to be a tool to reach those who are grappling with these larger questions. I work in architecture in Los Angeles. A lot of my colleagues and friends, dear friends, are very cynical folks. A lot of them are atheists. And they would never join me at church, but I was hoping that they might see a film where I could use as a bridge to engage in this kind of discussion. The takeaway would be that, that there is hope, that there is a spirit, you know, would you consider that there is a spiritual side to our lives other than the material world that we see here? Consider it, and if you would, consider the hope of Christ and of our God.
And you said it took you about 17 years to do this project, but it came to fruition at a perfect time where Christian, well, not because this film is not necessarily Christian, you share your faith. It's about faith. So yes, it does have this Christian undertone to it. But this is a great time for people of faith to bring their films to the forefront, because now it's more acceptable in Hollywood.
Right. I've been working on projects for 17 years. This project took about 6 or 7.
Okay.
And you hit it on the head, I think, when you said that Hollywood is more open to these kind of films. But the Christian films that have been produced often preach to the choir. This film, the intent was always to try to reach those that don't necessarily live this life, and kind of engage again in those kind of conversations to introduce them to it. So that was the goal.
And where'd you get the idea for the film, for the storyline of these two worlds? And, you know, well, the architect, we know where that came from. But the Ronin character, and you know, how did that all come together in your heart and in your mind?
I've always loved C.S. Lewis as a kid, and the Chronicles of Narnia. I used to read them as elementary school, actually, in junior high. And the idea that these inner struggles that we all have can be illustrated on this figurative battlefield, I've always been fascinated by it. So essentially, that was the template I was using, but I just kind of changed the battlefield. You know?
And one of the things that, you know, the amount of time it took to bring this from conception to completion, you had several challenges and almost, maybe they felt this way, insurmountable obstacles in the way. So it was really a stretch of faith. And I want to know, how did you personally grow through this project itself?
Obstacles? There are no obstacles in film. It's so easy. Anyone can. No, it did really stretch me, and I like to say that nothing has grown my faith, other than my marriage. Nothing has grown my faith more than this project.
Yeah.
I mentioned I tend to be more of a cynical kind of person. I don't pray for parking spots, you know, at the mall and things like that. But you know,
should you have whole milk or 2%? Yeah.
But just going through this project and overcoming the obstacles, it really kind of brought me back to more of a childlike faith, in that I was able to see God provide in ways that I couldn't deny. It had to be, you know, God's hand.
Talk about the cast. I recognize one of those faces in the film. Talk about the cast.
Oh, yeah, Adam Vornia starred. He has that dual role. He plays both Cain, Madison, and the Ronin. And we were very fortunate to pick him up. He was in a show called Seventh Heaven from many years ago, and he was a regular on that show, and just a joy to work with. He happens to be a believer as well, and it was neat. We're now close friends, and it was neat to see how he revealed to me that this role kind of paralleled his own personal life, you know, and his ups and downs with his faith.
Wow.
So that was neat.
Yeah. So it really spoke to him to be able to play that role, and he could do it authentically as well.
Yeah.
Craig, so glad to have you with us today. Masterless was just released a couple days ago. It's available, you said, on Amazon, available in Walmart. Also, did you say
Netflix.
Netflix, yeah. I wasn't going to say it.
iTunes.
but yeah, you said it.
iTunes.
Okay.
You can go to the website
Masterless.
masterlessfilm.com.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being with us today here on The Harvest Show. I encourage our friends, our viewers right now, as you're watching, to connect with Craig. You can go to masterlessfilm.com, or as always, you can go to our website, harvest-tv.com. We'll link you back to his site as well. And the film's out since Tuesday. You can pick up your copy at a variety of distribution outlets. Coming up later, we're going to hear from singer Jonathan Butler as he performs Give It Up to God. But next, Pastor Mark Lance with today's Connections. We'll be right back.